Hey garden friends, my name is Alexa and welcome back to Bloom and Wilt Gardens. In today's video, we're talking all about the July home garden and what you need to do to be successful in the month of July to plan, plant, prune, pick, and preserve your home garden. This video is part of my series that I'm doing this year where I cover all 12 months of the home garden. Yes, you can grow food probably close to 12 months of the year, especially with the proper season extension methods that I talk about throughout this series. I am so passionate about sharing this with others, how you can grow food longer. No, you don't have to wait until Memorial Day to plant your garden. You can plant it in March and you can keep harvesting those veggies all the way through January of next year. I am a home gardener in Northeast Ohio in Zone 6B. A year ago, I was Zone 6A, so I often just tell people I'm Zone 6. If you are a northern climate gardener like me, then this video and this video series is for you. All the information that I talk about in today's video and all the ones before and the ones to come are included in my 12-month gardening guide called the Great Lakes Veggie Gardener Guide, and I made this specifically for those of us who live in the Great Lakes states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin. But if you're a neighboring state, this is for you too. I welcome all gardeners. So if you like this kind of content and haven't seen the previous month's videos, I have a playlist with all of the previous 6-month videos included. Tons of great information that will get you started on growing the best home garden that you've ever had. So let's just dive right into the July garden. First, we're going to talk about planning. What are the garden tasks that we need to do or be preparing for in the month of July? So if you have grown garlic, and if you've never grown garlic, I suggest you do. You plant garlic in October, so we've got some months to prepare for that. But garlic is one of those easy crops that you plant it and basically forget it for 9 months. And then in July, we harvest it. So if you are growing garlic, you want to start thinking about preparing a place where you're going to dry your garlic after harvesting. And this process is called curing. You can't just pull your garlic up out of the ground and then shove it in a drawer somewhere for storage. It will get moldy and you don't want that to happen. When you harvest your garlic, you need to cure it, and you're going to need a space where you can hang your garlic upside down in a dark location that's not too humid. This is the same thing that you also do with onions. So if your onions look like they're getting ready to be harvested as well, you'll have to cure those for like 2 weeks is a good measure. And then you can go ahead and put them away for storage and use for the longer term. Part of your plan should also include continuing to succession sow different crops. So things like leafy greens, carrots and beets, any kind of root crop, potatoes, bush beans, peas. A lot of these sorts of things take less than 100 days to grow, maybe even like 50 to 60 days to grow. You can keep planting seeds throughout the entire season. You don't have to just put your whole garden in May and then leave it. You can keep planting many different crops in the months of May and June and July and August and still get a harvest out of them. You just have to look on your seed packet how many days till maturity. If you're in your frost-free growing season, like if we take a squash plant and it says it takes 60 days for that plant to fully mature, and from today's date and you add 60 days from now, you figure out, okay, what is that date? If you haven't hit that first frost, plant more seeds. If you're growing tomatoes, it's likely your tomato plants are gonna start falling over if you haven't tied them up. Tomatoes will naturally grow along the ground if you don't have human intervention. Tomatoes are a ground vining crop. That's how they would grow in the wild. For us, we like to have our tomatoes growing upright because that will get us better fruit that doesn't have bugs in it. We have to tie those plants up. So as those tomato plants start to get larger, if you don't have them supported by a tomato cage or tying up by string or something else, a stake, then they're gonna fall over. So before they get heavy and bound with a lot of fruit, you wanna make sure you're tying them up. You will probably notice that there's a lot of pest pressure coming on this month, especially things like Japanese beetles and squash bugs. I fight with them every July. And the best way that I have found to control those things is to get a cup of soapy water and then go outside with my cup and then flick the bugs into that cup. And I find that works a lot better than trying to spray them, or with the Japanese beetles, you can buy those like little bags that catch them. I hate those. Those just attract more Japanese beetles to my area, which I don't want more of them. So I've stopped buying those trap bags. And if I just am diligent enough to take my little cup of soapy water out every day, then I can keep up on them more easily. You want to make sure you're planning for good watering session on your plants. So you want to deeply water your plants at the root base every 2 to 3 days. If you can use like a soaker hose or some kind of sprinkler system to run for like an hour or 2 hours every 3 days, your plants are gonna do better than if you were to run that same system for 10 minutes every single day, because you want that water to get really deep at the root base instead of just kind of watering overhead and having a light soaking on top of the surface. You really want that water to go deep. So I'd recommend watering for a longer period of time every 3 days rather than short periods every day. Weeds are gonna continue to crop up all over the place. Try to keep up on it as much as possible. Hopefully you have mulched your garden well. I have talked about mulching extensively in the previous videos. So if you've mulched your garden well, you shouldn't have a lot of weed pressure. But if you haven't mulched your garden, then you're gonna need to keep up on those weeds, or just embrace it and say, c'est la vie, we will have weeds and we'll just do the best we can. So what can we still be planting in July? Like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of stuff that we can still plant in July. If there is enough time between now and our frost-free growing season, go ahead and plant more of that frost tender crop. July is also the time that we need to be planting our fall garden. When I say fall garden, we can't plant the fall garden in the fall because we don't have enough sunlight. As we get closer to the winter solstice, we're gonna start losing light every day, right? So we have to plant our fall gardens in July so the plants have enough time to mature and don't require as much light later on in the year, and then we harvest those plants in the fall. So those cold crops like broccoli and cabbage, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, kohlrabi, kale, and collards, they benefit from the warm temperatures to be direct sown in the ground in mid-July. It will help their germination. Hopefully you won't have too much pest pressure that the little insects are trying to eat your baby seedlings. If that seems to be a problem, I would also recommend trying to start a lot of those plants indoors if you're able to, and then transplant them in August. But if you can't do that, you can still direct sow them in the ground. They may benefit from having a cover over top, like some mesh netting, or even tulle, like tutu material that you can get at like Walmart or a fabric store, and laying that over top of little tender brassica seedlings will help keep pests away from them. But if you getting them planted in July is going to be the best time of year to ensure that that plant has enough time to mature for a fall harvest and before we start to lose sunlight. Succession sow all your other summer veggies that grow faster, like cucumbers and zucchini, bush beans. All of those are pretty fast growers, so if you are planting more seeds of those in July, you're bound to get a harvest before your first frost date. All of your root veggies like carrots and beets and rutabaga and turnips, you can keep planting seeds for those now through like August. By the time they mature, you can also likely just leave them in the ground as it gets cold, because the ground is going to act as a refrigerator for those types of root crops, which is really nice. And then you can harvest carrots and beets on Thanksgiving morning and add to your Thanksgiving meals. I love to harvest those things for Thanksgiving and Christmas and have fresh vegetables that I pulled right from the earth. It's a wonderful thing. You can also get another round of potatoes in if you plant your seed potato in July. You'll be harvesting those by October. Last year, I planted popcorn in July, and I got a really beautiful harvest of popcorn in October, and it was like the maize sort of corn. It was the glass gem variety. So I've got that perfect multicolored corn cob that was beautiful for photos, and it's so representative of fall. So if you didn't get any corn planted, there's a lot of varieties of corn that will grow in like 70 days or less. Can be great for a fall garden. So for pruning, you're likely going to need to prune your tomato plants by July. A good rule of thumb is to keep the first 12 inches from the ground up of your tomato plant clear of any branches or suckers. By keeping the 12 inches clear, it keeps those branches off the ground. If tomato branches are touching the ground, they will usually pick up something in the soil that is going to spread disease across the plant. So if you keep at least the first 12 inches clean, so no greenery is touching the soil, then you're going to help extend the life of that plant and reduce any kind of disease spreading. July is also a good time to pinch off excess leaves from your different cucuberous plants like cucumbers, squash, and melon. Those kind of plants put off a lot of leafy greens that they're really not all necessary. If you pinch off a lot of the excess leaves, and make sure you leave the leaves that have any kind of fruit coming off of them, but all the extra ones, if you pinch those off, that plant is gonna focus more of its energy on the fruit production rather than the energy spent on making all of the greenery. Now, any plants that you grew for the springtime, if they haven't already gone to seed, they likely will have been going to seed by July. So it's best at that point, if you don't want to save seeds, go ahead and take those plants out of the ground. Use that space for new plantings of another round of summer crops or plantings for your fall garden. If you want to save seeds, then just leave them alone and let them do their thing. Once the plant has basically all turned brown and died back, you'll find these little seed pods that have appeared all along the stalk, and the seeds are inside, and you can go ahead and collect those and grow more of your plants with the seeds that you have saved instead of buying them from the store. We are harvesting all kinds of things in July, so lots and lots of things to pick. Garlic is usually able to be harvested in July, especially hardneck garlic. That's the only kind that I have experience with is hardneck varieties. I know in southern climates, they do more of the soft neck. For us in the north, we're gonna plant hardneck varieties in October and then harvest them in July. Onions and carrots and cabbage should all be ready for harvest. If you had put those in the ground in April, summer squash is going to become abundant. So this is when you can start giving all your neighbors and your family and friends your extra zucchinis and your yellow squashes that you can't keep up with. You will find lots of green beans and cucumbers in abundance. Your beets should start to be nice and round, sort of tennis ball size is a good time to harvest your beets, and they remain kind of nice and tender. And leafy greens if you have been succession sowing them. For berries, some strawberry varieties may still be producing in July, especially if it's an ever-bearing. For me, I have mostly June-bearing strawberries, so I get my big harvest in June. But I do have some plants that are ever-bearing, and they'll keep producing strawberries throughout the summer month. I get usually a very big harvest of raspberries, blackberries, and blueberries in the month of July. Towards the end of July, you should start to see your cherry tomatoes start to appear. So those are usually the first tomatoes that are ready for harvest, or any kind of cherry tomato varieties. You'll start to have some green peppers on your plants. All peppers, regardless of the variety, will turn a color: red, yellow, purple, brown, orange, if you leave them on the plant long enough. All peppers start off as green peppers. Those green bell peppers you see in the store, they're picked green, but if they weren't picked, they would probably turn red or orange or yellow. So if you want a green pepper, pick the pepper, but just know if you leave it on the plant for another month or so, maybe less than that, it will turn a color. It's when those peppers turn a color is when they're considered fully ripe, and when you could save the seeds to grow more of that variety in the future. If you pick a green pepper and save the seeds, you will likely not have fertile seeds because they're not mature yet. So lastly, I'm going to cover preservation for the foods that we are picking in the month of July. July is zucchini season, so you're gonna get ready to make all things zucchini related. I like to make zucchini bread. I do have a video about making zucchini bread I can share. Making zucchini noodles. So if you have a spiralizer tool, they're pretty cheap. I got mine off Amazon and it wasn't very expensive, and it has all kinds of different like attachments. So I use that and I put the zucchini on it and I spin it and it makes the zucchini noodles. So that's a really great low carb option if that's something that you're doing. And I will put any kind of sauce on those zucchini noodles that I would have put on like spaghetti noodles. You can also make those noodles and then hang them to dry as another way to preserve them to use later on. And then there's some fun recipes out there to make canned pineapple zucchini. You basically cube up zucchini, pour pineapple juice in, and then water bath can it. And when you go to eat it, the zucchini chunks taste like pineapple. All of the beets, carrots, and green beans that you're going to be harvesting, an easy way to preserve those is by blanching and freezing them into storage bags. In the previous videos, I've talked more about the blanching process. So if you check out the May or June video, you can hear more about how to blanch and why that's important. Or you can pressure can these things to make them shelf stable. I don't recommend water bath canning beets, carrots, or green beans because they're not acidic enough to preserve them. But if you have a pressure canner, then you can use that to preserve those items into jars. I was nervous the first time I ever tried a pressure can. I had found a YouTube video that I watched over and over again as I was trying to use my pressure canner to make sure I was doing it right. And after I did it once, I was like, oh, this is really not that bad. So if you can get a pressure canner, I really recommend using that for preserving like beets and carrots and green beans. It really isn't as hard or scary as it may seem. It's not gonna blow up at you. There's lots of safety features on them to prevent that from even happening. As you're getting cucumbers, the best way to preserve cucumbers is to pickle them. You don't have to water bath can your pickles. You can make them in your refrigerator and just keep them in your fridge. But all of your extra vegetables, so if you don't have enough veggies to actually like make a whole jar of one thing, you can throw all kinds of random veggies in a jar and pickle them together, or you can ferment them together. Both are really great and easy ways to use up random bits and pieces of your veggie. If you have a couple mason jars, you can do a lot with that. And then all of the berries that you're picking, you can freeze all your berries. I recommend freezing berries on a cookie tray. Freeze that first, and then when they're all frozen individually, then put them into a bag and then put them in the freezer at that point. It just makes it easier if you're pulling out and need like a handful here and there for like making smoothies or something to get that. Otherwise, if you put them all in a bag at one time, they're gonna clump together and make a big frozen clump of berries, which is not as easy to take apart when you're trying to like make a smoothie. And making any kind of jam or jellies or preserves out of the fruit it's really not too hard. I mean, basically you're throwing all the fruit into a big pot. You're gonna add some kind of sugar. I like to do sugar alternatives like monk fruit or stevia when I make my jams, and then I will use a sugar-free pectin made by Sure-Gel to, it helps it hold its form. You just kind of put it all together and it boils. You boil it for a while, you stir it a lot, and then you put it in your mason jars, and then you water bath can it. And I'm very much simplifying that whole process, but it's not hard to do. Once you've done it once, it kind of just sticks with you on how to do it again. So if you have a lot of berries coming in, making some sort of jam out of them is a very easy way to preserve those. And that is the July garden. I hope you've learned so much from today's video about all the things that you can do in your garden in July, what you're harvesting, what you're preserving, what you need to plan for. I mean, the garden is in full force. I'm hoping that you are loving it and enjoying it. If this video was helpful to you, please make sure to like it, share it with a friend, and leave a comment below letting me know what was the most helpful part of it. And if you have any other questions, please let me know. I am happy to answer them for you. So next up is going to be all about the August garden, so make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when the next video comes out. I hope your gardens are doing beautifully. Tell me all about them. Connect with me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok, and I'll catch you on the next video. Have a wonderful day, my friends. Do something you love. Take care. Bye-bye.